check this bike out, huh? The new Z900 RS from Kawasaki. Shall we? Yes, we shall. So Kawasaki has built these bikes in Japan, not in another factory, and they're the inline 4. This bike looks old and retro, but actually it's all brand new technology. People that consider a Ninja, the sales guy was telling me, should at least take this for a test drive. Single monoshock for the back, it's kind of off the side, but pretty cool looking bike. And they make 2 variations of this. Mechanically they're the same, but there's a few small differences. The Z900 RS is just your standard street bike, right? As you can see. And I mean, it looks nice. It does, it looks nice. But the Cafe Edition right here comes with a little fairing, and it has like a little bit of a different handlebar setup on it too, which just makes it a little different than the other one. You can see these bars are lower. Those have a rise on them. But besides for that, they're pretty much identical bikes. The rep told me they're fast. This will be a fun ride. I'm looking forward to this ride. Let's go. Cool. So while we're waiting for people that didn't wear jackets and gloves to get their stuff on, let's just talk a little bit about the bike. Immediately, just looking at this bike, I can see an ABS light on, which means the bike has ABS, which is awesome. It also has a gear indicator and a temperature gauge. I wouldn't say Kawasaki is known for all of its technology on its bikes, but this one has got quite a bit. It's got your average, a range, the temperature outside. So, I mean, this is all good stuff. Still no cruise control. And we're still using a key like it's 1839. It appears that it may have a shift light on it as well. This is quite a retro bike. I mean, this is the way motorcycles used to be a long time ago. You know, 70s and 80s when the Jap bikes started coming out originally. This bike is still made in Japan.
Ready to ride?
Yes, sir. They are super safety conscious. Like, I've never seen rides. They make you do a breathalyzer. And of course all the safety gear. You go to Harley and they're just like, we don't really care, just go. So I opted for this one instead of the Cafe Racer just because I wanted to just feel this bike as it, you know, originally was intended, so to speak. And the thing I like about this bike, just because it's, when you look at it, it looks like, oh, that's from the 80s. Looks like an 80s bike. But could be further from that. It's got Ninja power plant of some sort and all modern technology, good suspension, all that stuff. Packaged on a retro chassis. So I've always liked Triumph. They like to do that with their modern classic lineup. They do that quite frequently. So that's why I was really excited to try this bike out. Oh my word, this bike is so fast. I know I'm only doing 45, but I can tell you right now, this bike wants to launch. Oh man. This is like a crotch rocket with a old school motorcycle put on top of it. I love it. If you were to walk up to this bike sitting on a showroom floor, you would not think anything about this bike would be fast. I mean, it looks like an old cruiser, but it's not a cruiser. This is a sport bike. I was originally thinking too this would be like a Vulcan or maybe a Honda Rebel or even a Shadow, but this bike is not that way. Redline's 10,000 RPM, so it's not like hyper, but you can feel it's quite violent. I will say one thing too, that I'm not a fan of this throttle. It's either on or off. There's a big dead zone in that, and I noticed that on the Versus when I rode it too. It was like a free play zone, and it just kind of didn't really feel that great. But this bike is definitely very deceptive. So the brakes are not as good as you would expect for the amount of power that you have here. They're a little hard. And again, the throttle is very whiplash. There's not a lot of like the dead zone on the throttle is like on off, which I wish it was just a little bit more linear. But you can really feel on this bike, you can really feel that it has the heart of a sport bike, but it's missing the braking. And as far as handling goes, it handles pretty good, but you definitely can feel the understeer in it when you're cornering, almost like you would with a cruiser. The suspension is comfortable. I've gone over some pretty good bumps right now and really don't have much to complain about. And the bike wants to go, but the brakes, again, very stiff, and I ended up utilizing front and back pretty hard at that last corner, and it wasn't the feedback that I got from the brake pedal was really hard, and the bike wanted to stop, but it didn't feel very positive to engage it. It just felt like I was squeezing on something that was hard. Some other bikes, you know, you drive and you hit the brakes hard and the bike wants to like flip over frontwards. I mean, you're definitely well away from that feeling on this bike. Definitely has an interesting feel to it, because when you see it and then you get on it and start it, it just starts to, you start to envision that you are riding a street bike, but you're actually riding a classic motorcycle platform. So here's some of the specs on it from VoiceOver Pete. Hey, VoiceOver Pete here. So super cool bike, again, as I've been talking about in the video. Just absolutely love the fact that you can get a retro looking bike with crazy modern performance features. So this bike was actually styled after the original bike of the 1971 Z1, and the Z900 obviously is that bike, and the Z900 RS throws all of the retro styling features, RS retro styling features on it. Now there are 3 different versions of this bike that you can get. You can get the base model, which is what I'm driving. You can get the SE model, which adds a little bit of extra features for an additional $500. So original model starts off at $12,149, mid-grade $12,899, and then the Cafe Racer one, which you saw in the beginning of the video, is just after $14,000. Still not a lot of money for a bike like this. You're sporting about 111 horsepower and somewhere's around 93 Newton meters of torque, or 73 foot-pounds in the US. All in all, again, pretty stinking awesome bike. Really, really fun, very responsive on the throttle, which makes the bike a blast to ride. It definitely, in my opinion, does not feel like it's only got a little over 100 horsepower. This is more in the 150 range. But I absolutely loved riding this bike, and I love the look of it. I would just love to pull up on a stoplight and absolutely destroy somebody on another bike, thinking I'm just riding like a 1970s Kawasaki. All right, back to the action. I'm not sure why Kawasaki decided to make this bike or why they decided to keep its production in Japan, but this is a high-end motorcycle that they're creating for somebody who's looking for a very specific type of bike. I can't imagine that they would sell a lot of these bikes. I don't think this would be anything like a Ninja, because again, there's a very narrow market for these bikes, but they're cool looking, they're super fast, they have all modern reliable technology on them, so what's not to love about that? Especially if you go with the cafe racer style, you have dropped in bars a little bit and a fairing on the front. Again, what's not to like about that? Talk about the ultimate sleeper. You looking at this bike, you would never think that this bike is as fast as it is. My overall impressions on this bike would be that the looks are awesome because I love sleepers. The power on this bike is incredible. Even though we can't fully explore that on a demo ride, you can get the sense of this bike just wanting to spank something. As far as the comfort goes, it's a pretty nice seating position. You're not sitting like you're on a sport bike, but the bike is a sport bike, so that's cool. Cons though on this bike, and maybe it's just this model, but I have a feeling it's not. Look at the play on the throttle, and when you let off the throttle, it is exceptionally back and forth, like whiplash. So that is really too bad. I'm not sure why, because this is a throttle body injection, why they couldn't map it just a little bit better. The other thing about this bike is the brakes. They're just really not that great. So I would also opt for brakes, because this is a fast bike. You want to be able to stop, and the brakes on this bike just feel hard. They don't feel super aggressive. Like, the engine does not match the braking on this bike. So let's just see if we can flog this thing just a pinch. Sometimes we have that opportunity here. Okay, ready? Yeah, this bike is super fast, but really aggressive on the throttle. And the other thing too, the shifting is not as quick as it should be on a sport bike like this. It doesn't have a quick shifter, so it's not like this bike with a quick shifter and the throttle just a little gentler on the engage and then better brakes. You would have a really, really good platform. But as it stands right now, this bike is awesome. It's really awesome. Hats off to Kawasaki for making it. I hope they sell a bunch of them. I hope it's not just like a one-off model that they don't make anymore, because I think once you drive this bike and you crack it open, it is really surprising. So thanks again for tuning into the video. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to be pulling back in here, so I'm going to sign off for now. But let me know your thoughts if you have one of these bikes, if you've driven one, if you like them, if you think it's a waste of money. I'd be curious to hear what you have to say. Please, as always, ride safe.